Good morning, Frankfurt. It's 9 o'clock sharp. It's a beautiful sunny day. A very warm welcome to you to our 50th Food for Thought in cooperation with the Association of Foreign Banks in Germany. Today again, Frankfurt is 1 hour ahead of London. Let's make the best of it. Today, we're going to explore a topic that has been attracting extensive attention in the global financial sector, the latest developments in the digital euro. In this area of rapid digital development, the digital transformation of currency has become an important trend in global financial innovation. Europe, as an important engine of the global economy, every step it takes in the field of digital currency is closely watched in the world. According to Dr. Joachim Nagel, the president of Deutsche Bundesbank, the digital euro may come around 28, 29. This is not only a bold prediction of technological progress, but also a profound plan for the financial future. But will it be wholesale or retail? Will it support digital assets or even supplant stablecoins? Those are the key questions to be answered today. The ECB isn't the driving seat and actively advancing the design work of the digital euro. In its third progress report and design, it has conducted an in-depth discussion on the access and distribution of the digital euro. These discussions involve not only a technical level, but also how to ensure that the digital euro can serve safely and efficiently. Today, we are very happy to have an expert with profound insights in the field of the digital euro. Mr. Daniel McLean, Deputy Head of the Digital Euro Product Proposition Division of the ECB. Following his master's in astrophysics, Mr. McLean moved into the area of payments. From 2006 to 2011, he worked in financial services for Accenture, specializing in large-scale payment implementation projects. He moved from there to the Central Bank of Ireland in 2011 and played a key role in developing the Irish National Payment Plan. In 2013, Mr. McLean joined the ECB, where he works in the Digital Euro Directorate. His current focus is on the digital euro and the development and implementation of policies to support the catalyst functioning of the ECB, aiming to ensure smooth functioning of the financial market infrastructure. Dear audience, please feel free to input your questions during or after the speech and the Q&A session in Zoom. Mr. McLean, the stage is yours.
Many thank you. Many thank yous. Maybe we can share the presentation and we can get going. So today, I would like to give an update and discuss the digital euro and the reasonings behind the digital euro, its use cases, and how we would believe it will interact in the market. So as that said, my name is Daniel McLean. I am the Deputy Head of the Product Proposition for the digital euro. What does the product proposition mean? Well, it actually means the front end of the digital euro. What the digital euro will look like in the hands of European citizens. Also, how PSPs, payment service providers, should distribute the digital euro. What is the cost of all of this and how institutions, intermediaries should be compensated. So a small component of the entire ecosystem there. If we can move to the next slide. So first of all, I would like to discuss what will the digital euro be? You know, how will it exist in the ecosystem, and what is our vision for it as the ECB and as the euro system? And if we can move forward again. So we believe that we have to build the future of money here. So we have to respond to their evolving payment trends. We have to reflect people's increased preference for digital means of payment, while still offering the option to pay with cash. So we've seen in the market, people like paying electronically. We've seen a direct trend away from cash towards electronic means of payment. And we believe as a central bank, we need to respond to that. Now, while also making sure cash always exists. We would like to give the option to the European consumer to either pay with cash or a digital means of payment. We want to make people's lives easier, providing a public means of payment that can be used free of charge for any digital payment in the euro area. So that's critical for us, that you would always have a way to pay electronically, publicly. And finally, a very important point that sometimes gets forgotten is to ensure the resilience of European payments. A critical factor for us is what we classify Europe's strategic autonomy, reducing our dependence on non-European payment providers. Because in a worst case scenario with geopolitical tensions, we have to ensure that European citizens always have a means to pay, both physically via cash and also via electronic means. We know that 13 out of 20 euro area countries do not have national card schemes and are fully dependent on international schemes for digital payments. So that's building the future of our money. And if we move forward to the next slide, we have to ensure that when we build that future, that we cover all use cases, that people have the capability to pay across the variety of aspects that currently pay today. So we have no single European solution to pay across the euro area, both online and offline. It doesn't exist. That gap is filled in by non-European players. We would like citizens of the euro area to be able to use a digital means of payment anywhere they go. Depending on what holidays you go for work, you can always have an easy way to pay that's fully recognizable. You're not struggling paying digitally, in whatever European country you visit. So what use cases do we want to cover? And I'll cover these in a bit more detail on the next slides. That's person to person, point of sale, and e-commerce payments. And if you look at the diagram there, it is the evolution of cash. So cash covers person to person and physical presence. It covers point of sale, but it doesn't cover e-commerce payments. There's a gap there. We want to cover that gap. So we want a digital euro to facilitate person to person, not just proximity payments, but also non-proximity payments. So you can pay your father, your mother, your daughter, your sister, your friends in other countries in Europe very simply, very clearly, very efficiently. In addition, we want to facilitate e-commerce. Currently in e-commerce payments, you have very varying different ways to pay across Europe, very much depending on your country you live in. Merchants have to facilitate many, many different payment solutions at significant costs to them. We want the digital euro to give a baseline experience to facilitate e-commerce across all 20 euro area countries. So we need to have a payment solution for all use cases digitally when it comes to the digital euro. And that is what we're currently designing. So if you moved to the next slide. But that being said, cash will continue to exist. As I specified, this is not a project to remove cash. In fact, quite the opposite. This is a project about choice. It's about giving the European consumer always the choice to pay with cash and to pay with a digital means of payment. I think we can be very clear about this, even if you look at the current legislative proposal on the table in the Council and Parliament. It's actually a joint proposal, maintaining cash and also facilitating the digital euro. But in line with cash, we also seek to have a digital euro and seek to have current private means of payment. We do not want to take the market here. We want to take a section of the market to facilitate the reduction of cash in the future. So as cash reduces, we believe the digital euro can be a good alternative to people who would like a public way to pay digitally. But that being said, the current means of payment that you pay digitally today will continue to exist. That's via card, via bank transfers, and via other wallets that you would use. They will continue to exist, and we believe there's plenty of the market existing to allow all means of payment to coexist independently and also to facilitate and even to facilitate some of the private means of payment built on digital euro rails. And I'll discuss that on a future slide. But that being said, we would also like to bring the cash-like features to the digital world. Apologies. With, as I've discussed, pan-European reach, free for basic use, extremely respectful of privacy, available offline, and critically issued by the central bank. So they're all key components of cash. We want to simulate those key components also in the digital euro. And if we move to the next slide. So that was a bit of the why of the digital euro and what the use cases we want to build. Now we'll move to more of the key design choices, a bit of a deep dive into those use cases and the technologies that we are looking at. And if we move forward. So as I specified, your euro, your choice. We have to have a diverse set of use cases, devices, and technologies to cover all those payment scenarios. So on the use cases side, we have person-to-person, point-of-sale, e-commerce, already covered. But on the connectivity side, we have to ensure that we have online and offline aspects. Online, it's known in the market. It's how we usually pay today electronically. Offline, more innovative. We believe that we want to facilitate an offline digital euro, what we classify as an offline bearer instrument, very much like cash. So it's an offline payment without a third-party intermediary. So it will allow for an offline payment in all payment scenarios where you do not have internet connectivity. So we believe that's quite critical for resilience and also for privacy. And I'll discuss that later on. On the consumer device side, we want to ensure that you can make the payments from your smartphone, also from currently you use cards, and also from your web interface for e-commerce payments. On consumer interfaces, we'd like to see a dual approach here. The Euro system wants to develop a digital Euro app to create a harmonized digital payment experience across the Euro area. So no matter where you go, no matter which merchant you go into, they will know easily that you want to pay with a digital euro. There's no questions asked what you have to pay with, what card are you using. It's just known. In addition, we want to give the PSPs the option to build the digital euro into their own apps, so to allow them to innovate there as well. We create the baseline user experience with the digital euro app and allow PSPs, banks to innovate on top of that. And of course, I suppose in the back end, the technologies that we would like to see used, near field communications, I think we're all quite noticeable about that particular technology via your contactless payment cards currently. QR codes came in a lot in the pandemic. We want to facilitate those. And of course, internet technology based on how you actually make the payment. So that's the choice of use cases, devices, and technology. And if we move forward to the next slide, we want to then focus on what we believe is one of the critical components for the digital euro, and that's privacy. We have heard very clearly from citizens of Europe, from our politicians, from the legislator, that this has to be the highest level of privacy. We have to ensure that people have confidence in paying with a digital euro and that it's privacy by design. This will be one of the most private means of payment ever designed. The euro system, the ECB, will not be able to identify people based on the payments they make. It will not be possible. We will only see a minimal set of pseudonymized data. We cannot link that data to a private individual. Of course, as with other means of payment, intermediaries, banks, payment service providers who offer you the digital euro account will have to have access to certain data to be compliant with AML regulations. That being said, the euro system will implement even more safeguards, including internal data segregation, auditing to ensure the highest privacy protection standards. And not only that, we will go further with offline functionality. Paying offline would be almost like paying with cash. Transactions would only be known to the payer and payee. There would be no third-party intermediary. It would literally be a transaction between the user and the merchant, or the user and the other user if it's a P2P payment, with nobody knowing any aspects of those transactions. So we believe that the privacy aspects of the digital euro are fundamental. We are designing all the technology around privacy, and the entire project revolves around that privacy by design methodology. So if we move forward to the next slide. But that being said, we also have to ensure that no one gets left behind. Accessible and inclusive. We call this digital financial inclusion. Not just financial inclusion, digital financial inclusion. We've been told by our consumer organizations and our elderly associations that it is critical that we have to facilitate digital inclusion for people. People in Europe are very highly banked, well over 90%, and I think it's even 98% in the euro area, correct me on that figure though, have bank accounts. It's not about people having bank accounts. It's about people being able to access those bank accounts electronically. And we have a problem there. Up to 30% of people will have difficulties and struggle with that digital inclusion. We have to ensure with the digital euro that people have the option, and always have the option, to facilitate those digital payment methods. So that being said, we want to ensure there's always a physical card. So if you want, if you really don't like using an app, that you have the capability of using a physical card, and also cash to defund and fund that card. Users would always have the option to have face-to-face support for the digital euro. So you can walk into a PSP to facilitate and ask, okay, I need to open a digital euro account, please help me with this. In addition, we want to have incredibly fast switching between providers. So currently, nobody likes switching their bank account, their payment account. It's difficult. Direct debits don't transfer properly. Standing orders don't transfer. It takes days. Your account number switches. It's challenging. Those challenges will not be there for the digital euro. Our account portability will be seamless. Your account number will transfer. Your recurring payments will transfer. Your pays will transfer, all within a fraction of a second. So we believe that's also critical to offer that customer service. And finally, to ensure that no one is left behind, we would like, and if you look at the legislation, that there is dedicated public entities in every member state to provide that face-to-face service to people who would like to use the digital euro digitally. So you could walk in to, for example, a digitally excluded person or who would have difficulty maybe using the app, could walk into, for example, a post office, could ask the person and say, listen, I would love to be a part of the digital euro ecosystem, help me. And they would get face-to-face direct help. And we think that is also critical. So that's one of the pillars we'd like to see in the digital euro, and that is digital financial inclusion, sitting alongside privacy by design. And if we move to the next slide, please. So that is a bit of the how and why of the digital euro. But now I'd like to discuss how all this will be implemented in practice, how we envisage the digital euro in the ecosystem, and what is the compensation model. And if we move forward. So we believe that intermediaries would play a key role, apologies, a frog in my throat. Intermediaries would play a key role in the distribution of the digital euro. What do we mean by intermediaries? Well, we mean payment service providers. Payment service providers are banks, e-money institutions, and payment institutions. We believe they are best placed to facilitate digital euro distribution, basically to offer the end user digital euro services like they do today for normal commercial bank payment solutions. Currently, PSPs have that customer relationship. We want them to maintain that customer relationship also when distributing the digital euro. But they would do that also with benefits. So we believe that they could build innovative services on top of the basic services that the digital euro would offer. In addition, they will be compensated for this too, and we talk about the compensation model a bit later. But that being said, and this is, I think, a critical question that banks have, and it's one of the most fundamental questions we get asked a lot. How would we ensure a healthy equilibrium between central bank money and commercial bank money? So currently, end users in Europe, customers in Europe, only have access to commercial bank money. We will now give them access to central bank money. But commercial bank money is used for lending. It is used to oil the wheels of the economy. If we were to take some of that commercial bank deposits away, that could cause problems. So we have the SSM, which is a single supervisory mechanism that needs to ensure the financial stability of banks. So in order to do that, we do not want the digital euro to be a significant store of value. We want it as a means of payment. So you need to store enough to facilitate your day-to-day, month-to-month payment means, and not so much more that you could, impact the financial stability of banks. Therefore, we need to have holding limits. So those holding limits will be decided closer to the issuance date of the digital euro. There's been a number that's been floating around. That number may or may not be the holding limit, depending on the analysis done closer to the issuance. In addition, we will have waterfall functionality. What do we mean by waterfall functionality? Well, basically, if you do not hold enough digital euro in your digital euro account, you could designate a commercial bank account to take some money there to ensure a payment will always go through. So if the payment is above the current amount of digital euro you have, it could take the remainder from a commercial bank account so the payment would not fail. So you have a seamless payment experience. In addition, we want it to be cash-like. So there is no remuneration for digital euro holdings. So it's like cash. So you'd hold digital euro without central bank remunerating it. So that would be a key difference between commercial bank deposits. However, that being said, this is a key area of research for the ECB and the euro system. So we're currently really deep diving on this topic to ensure we do not impact the financial stability of banks, while also ensuring, and this is critical, that there is a very good user experience for the digital euro. So there's a balancing act to have there, and we will do a lot more research in this area. And if we can move to the next slide. So we've talked about the impact on banks, but what is actually in it for private solutions? What is in it for PSPs, independent from the compensation model, which I will discuss probably, I think, in the next slide? We believe that the digital euro can offer a platform for innovation for private providers to build value-added services, such as conditional payments, splitting the bills, other things that we cannot think of today, to facilitate pan-European private payment solutions. And we believe the digital euro will help avoid the proliferation of maybe smaller domestic schemes that find it difficult to achieve pan-European reach. Leveraging the digital euro rails, the digital euro infrastructure, domestic solutions, domestic commercial, private solutions can very easily scale to pan-European reach and offer their services to all users in Europe rather than just the domestic users that currently see today. So we will provide the rails, they can use that infrastructure to facilitate a more globalized system that they would like to bring in. In addition, and this is the critical component for us, is that while facilitating private players in conjunction with the public digital euro, we will de facto then reduce our dependence on non-European players. Now, non-European players offer a key service today in Europe. We believe they will exist. This is not about, again, taking market share. It's about facilitating an alternative and also a future for European solutions to facilitate pan-European reach. So in a nutshell, that is providing the infrastructure, providing the rails, not just to facilitate the digital euro, but to facilitate private means of European payments. And if you'd like to move to the next slide, please. So how are we going to do all of this? We've talked a lot about, what the digital euro will be, the reasonings behind it, but how are we actually going to implement it? What are the rules that PSPs, banks will have to follow, will have to implement to facilitate the digital euro? Well, we are setting out and we are developing those rules now, and we call it the Rulebook Development Group. It is a group of market stakeholders and the ECB that is developing the standards that PSPs will have to implement to facilitate the digital euro. These are base level standards to ensure the digital euro will have a pan-European reach and a harmonized payment experience. But it will also give market participants freedom to innovate on top of these base level standards. In addition, it will allow, as I specified, private solutions to leverage some of the standards to ensure their own reach and their own development. But what is this Rulebook Development Group? Who are there? Well, it's actually a coalition of the market and the ECB, which comprises of intermediaries, which are banks, payment service providers, e-money institutions, payment institutions, retailers, large and small retailers, and also various consumer groups. They sit together every month, and there are many technical groups under this Rulebook Development Group developing the standards, the rules for the digital euro. And if we move to the next slide. So, this is probably a very important slide. We talked a lot about the how, the why, and how we get there with the rulebook, but it always comes down to money in the end. And what we classify that as the compensation model. Who gets compensated when and where? So we envisage for the digital euro a four-party model. So a four-party model is basically where you have the end user, you have the merchant, you have the bank or the PSP that offers payment services to the merchant, and you have the bank or PSP that offers payment services to the end user. So how does the money flow around that system? Well, we want the digital euro to be free for basic use for individuals. So banks, PSPs will have to offer it for free, the basic services for free. So, well, if banks have to offer it for free, it's quite difficult for them to recoup their costs. So how do we facilitate banks recouping their cost? Well, the euro system will offer its own services for free. So the euro system will bear its own cost. So the settlement mechanisms of the digital euro will be offered at its own cost to banks and acquiring banks. In addition, currently, if you look at the legislative proposal, there will also be what we classify as an intra-PSP fee between the acquiring bank and the issuing distributing bank. So for every transaction, the issuing bank will get a small percentage of that transaction, depending on what the legislation says. However, with that in case, there has to be safeguards for merchants. Merchants cannot be overcharged for accepting digital euro. We have to ensure that what we classify as the merchant service charge is low, and that because merchants will probably have an acceptance obligation that they're not paying high fees. So we believe that we have to have adoption incentive for end users, free for basic use, adoption incentives for PSPs. So PSPs, acquiring banks can charge for the services. Those charges cannot be high. Issuing banks will be able to get a small intra-PSP fee, while the euro system will bear its own costs. We believe that combination of factors will allow for a fair and balanced compensation model for the digital euro that will generate network effects. Honestly, people will not make massive profits from this, but as this is a public good and we want to facilitate a public means of payment, that will be the case. However, we will also allow for value-added services and innovative services on top of the basic services that PSPs, intermediaries, can charge the consumers for. And if we move to the next slide. So we have discussed the how, the why, the compensation, and the set of rules. But now, where do we stand and what is the way forward with the digital euro? If we move, bear with me. So we started this journey in October 2021, and for 2 years, we did what's classified as an investigation phase. We defined the concept, we explored technically, and we had a design proposal. We are now in what we classify as the preparation phase. That started last November, and it will continue to October 2025. The main expected steps in this preparation phase is finalizing the rulebook, the set of rules as I discussed, selecting service providers that will facilitate some of the key technology aspects on the settlement, the app, and also the various other components that are necessary to facilitate the payment product. We need to experiment a lot more, and we have to do a full deep dive into the technical aspects, especially further research into the offline functionality, because that is highly complex and very innovative. We also have to define the rollout and testing plan when we move forward. The next phase will start in November 2025, and that is the potential development and rollout of a digital euro. This June, we will publish our 4th progress report. But I just want to be very clear, all of this very much runs in parallel with the legislative proposal. And if we move to the next slide, this is all done with a democratic process in the European Parliament and Council. So as you know, there is currently legislation going through the Parliament and Council. We stand ready to provide technical support to the legislator, and also when they seek a design change, we stand ready to change a design based on the legislation. The Governing Council will not issue the digital euro until legislation has been adopted. If legislation is not adopted, we do not issue a digital euro. So we are not doing this independently. We are doing this in lockstep with legislation. And just to be clear, very clear on that point. And in addition, we will change where necessary based on the changes that come through the Parliament and the Council. However, we believe it is very important that we do this preparation. We believe it's very important that we prepare for, we hope, a positive decision via the legislator. So we are then ready to go ahead very quickly in implementing the digital euro. And there's not a significant time lag of issuing the currency. And I believe that's coming now to the end of the presentation. I think that was the last slide, indeed. So that is the last slide. I'm very thank you for the opportunity to present the digital euro today, and I'm free to answer any and all questions.
Yeah, thank you very, very much for this insightful presentation. Let me start with the first question. You said eventually there will be an obligation for acceptance of the digital euro, very much like there is an obligation for acceptance for cash. But whilst cash does not cause any costs, that obligation will cause costs. Is it correct?
So I think the obligation for acceptance is now specified in the legislative proposal, and that merchants who currently accept digital means of payment would need to accept the digital euro also. Yes, and that acceptance obligation will have costs. So we believe it's very, very critical that those costs were capped, is capped. There is a limit to those costs. So the merchant service charge would have to be looked at as being capped at a significantly low level to facilitate acceptance. And there's some metrics in the current legislative proposal to facilitate that. But maybe just to address your aspect that cash is free to merchants, it's not free. Cash has significant costs to merchants as well. Those costs tend to be a bit more invisible than the costs they have for card and electronic based payments, but there is costs to cash too. So there would be an acceptance obligation, because if we think it's quite critical, and the merchants also agree with this, we talked to them via the Rulebook Development Group, also via other groups, that there has to be a pan-European reach here. When you walk into a merchant, people expect to be able to pay with cash. There should be an expectation that they can pay with digital euro also. And we have to facilitate that consumer aspect too.
Now we have quite a few questions from the audience, and let me start with that one. Is there any reason why we have currently no single European solution for payments across the euro area? Any analysis you've done in that in preparation?
Well, it's an excellent question, and it's something the ECB has been trying to resolve since its inception. I think when we initiated the single currency, we always assumed that pan-European solutions would be developed. And unfortunately, it's been an incorrect assumption. It hasn't happened. And we have for the last 15, 20 years trying to stimulate the European market to facilitate a pan-European solution. Some have tried. We have a current solution in the works, I believe, the European Payments Initiative, which is trying to do that, and we wish it very much success, but I think it's only a few countries, maybe 4 or 5 currently. It's trying to launch a product in. Uh, I don't. We have tried to answer that question. It's difficult to know, and it's difficult to get a view on this. I believe European banks, European providers, because there was an alternative for non-European players, and they're very active in the market, and they offer very good products. It's an easier way forward. Let's use a non-European payment provider instead of trying to develop our own homegrown solution. And in addition, but we do see very, very good national solutions. You know, we have Bizum in Spain, Car Bancaire in France, Girocard in Germany, Bancomat in Italy, and various other solutions. But there seems to be a barrier to stop these solutions really being pan-European. And we believe we can remove those barriers via the digital euro, because we can create a fundamental infrastructure that these solutions can build upon while still offering the public product, which is the digital euro. So we do believe we can resolve that key issue that we've had for 20 years in Europe that we want to really want to resolve. And we do see it as one of the key pillars of the digital euro, to say we need a pan-European solution that's European governed, because we do not know what will happen globally. Currently, we have geopolitical tensions in Ukraine. We do not know what's going to happen in November in the US. So we do not know what will happen in Europe. So it's critical from us, and I've said it, I think, for a few times during the presentation, that European consumers always have a means to pay, that non-European jurisdictions should not be able to influence how we pay in Europe. So cash, we've covered that in cash. We have the euro. We have not covered it for the digital alternative. And the digital euro is there to facilitate that.
Looking across the border is also the next question. There's large amounts of Europe that physically circulate outside the Eurozone, in Southeast Europe, in North Africa, for example. Access to the digital euro would be quite something for them in countries where they don't have stable currencies. Are you looking into these aspects also? Does those aspects influence your decisions?
Currently, we are not looking into those aspects. I think if you look at the legislative proposal, it is clear that the digital euro should be available to EU citizens, I believe. I'm not sure, is that restricted to your area or not? I'd have to look at the proposal in detail, but it's currently for the European Union. The expansion outside that, of course, we would have a view that the digital euro would be always good to be accepted in those jurisdictions, so you could possibly pay in those jurisdictions in the future. But to offer it to those citizens, well, there would have to be a monetary agreement with these particular countries to facilitate that. I think we are not there yet in the analysis. I think the view here is get it working in Europe first, and get it, and then you can see about the next steps.
Yeah. The next question, I'm sure you have had many times and you intensively discuss it. Would the digital euro in any way affect the ECB's ability to conduct monetary policy, particularly interest rate setting and liquidity management?
We do not think it would affect us, and that's what the analysis for the last 2 years say it will not affect it. And we are currently doing a deep dive now as you speak with various ECB committees, your assist committees, to ensure that capability. And indeed, the ECB will ensure that. It will ensure that it does not affect the ECB's ability to implement monetary policy.
The next comes to capital markets. In listening to you, it's you've been taking very strong, more or less, a retail perspective, but looking at a wholesale perspective, how do you see the impact is going to be on the capital market, which is very fragmented? Would you see any impact on the more harmonization of capital markets? Would you see eventually the digital euro taking on the role that we have in stable coins, in digitalized assets today? What's your perspective on that?
The digital euro is primarily a retail product. It is not a wholesale. So if you look at what we envisage for the digital euro, only European citizens, end users can hold digital euro. We do not see businesses, corporates holding the currency. So that is where the wholesale aspect comes in. And we do have an entire work stream that's not affiliated to digital euro, but linked, that's working on wholesale central bank digital currency. Now, we already have wholesale central bank digital currency. It's our RTGS target 2, but it's about the next iteration of that particular platform and how the linkages with private stable coins, all those aspects will be facilitated in the future. So it's not really something we're looking at, but the ECB, the Euro system, is most certainly looking at this, and there's large-scale wholesale projects currently working on and currently developing within the ECB.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so another areas to watch certainly. Close to that is one of the questions: to what extent do you also have wealth management functions? You early on said there is no intention to make it a storage currency or wealth storage. But the question here is do you nevertheless foresee that the digital euro will be able to pay interest?
No. So currently, digital euro will not. We do not see it as a store of value. So we see current commercial bank money has a deposit guarantee scheme. We see this as a means of payment. So the holding limit will be set at a value that facilitates day-to-day payments. So you, of course, will be able to hold digital euro, but you would not be able to hold enough to facilitate wealth management, and you would not bear an interest rate on that. Mm-hmm. Currently. That's currently what the legislation says. I have to be very clear. Legislation is currently going through the Parliament and the Council, so we do not know what changes there would make and what the expectation. I only can speak from the current methodology.
What's the timeline of the legislative process?
I think you probably know just as much as me about the timeline. It is difficult to know the timeline currently. We would hope as quickly as possible, but we also want to give the Parliament and Council as much leeway as possible so they can discuss, and we would stand ready to answer any questions that they may have. We have European elections coming up, which then will pause the legislative processes a bit. So we would hope in the next year we would have a decision on should we can go ahead with an issuance or not. Let's see.
Yeah. The next question is quite a challenging one because it addresses the technological challenges. What technological challenges are you facing in the implementation? I would assume privacy plays a big role here. And can you elaborate a little bit more on that, how you digitally manage that?
Indeed. So I think the first aspect is the settlement engine and how we can ensure privacy within the settlement engine, how we can ensure that we cannot identify an end user. So we have to pseudonymize the data using either pseudonymized identifiers or one-time identifiers. So we have yet to decide on the technology of the backend. That will be done via the provider that will provide the services. But we have to ensure that the technology allows for non-identification. So whatever sits in our settlement infrastructure, it's not linked to anybody. It's literally linked to a randomized number that only a PSP can decrypt and say, okay, this is now linked to myself or yourself to facilitate that. But I just want to be clear, this is not a technology-driven project. It's a policy-driven project. But we will need very innovative technology to facilitate it, especially on the offline side. So what we want to do with offline is a bearer instrument. It is basically a transfer from me to you without a third party. That really hasn't been done before. We have to ensure the integrity of that entire transfer. So that's a secure element on your mobile phone to a secure element on another mobile phone, currently via an NFC transfer. All of that has to be secure, has to be tamper-proof. You have to make sure that everything is perfect there. That is difficult. and that is challenging. So we want to make sure we release it, but we want to have the time to ensure its integrity. So definitely there is a technological challenge on the offline, but we do believe we can overcome that challenge to really offer a very good product. Of course, the challenges don't stop there. We also have to have access to mobile phones, and some global providers tend not to like to give access. We have to get access. So if you look at currently in the legislative proposal, there's an article that states that we need to have access to the phones. So we need to have access to the secure element of the phone, so you can store your digital euro there. So I'm sorry, Apple, I'm sorry, especially, will have to facilitate that access.
Mm-hmm. Okay. In terms of in terms of technology, blockchain, will it play any role in that?
I do not know. So the decision on what the technology, the backend will be, has not been decided yet. Currently, we have a call for applications to provide that infrastructure. In addition, we will now have an invitation to tender quite soon, so people can tender. And at that stage, we will know more about what the technology should be. So just to be very clear on this point, all contracts that are signed will have a big disclaimer saying we will not go ahead unless legislation is in place. So we're just preparing now, and just to be very clear on this point.
Yeah. Would you foresee that this payment structure would find heavy usage also outside the euro area? That other countries with weaker currencies or less developed payment systems would start using it?
I wouldn't think so, but these would have to be agreements with the ECB. So if you want to use the euro, I think physically or even digitally, there has to be a monetary agreement with the ECB, unless you want to use it independently of that, which of course the ECB would not facilitate, would not condone to that extent. So that really is when the currency is working on the ground. Those type of conversations would have to be had. We do not currently have them within the project.
Cyber criminality is all over the place, and I'm sure it's one of the main areas of concern. Would you expect that it will draw a lot of attention of attackers?
Most certainly. I think it would be a key vector for attackers to look at how they could hack the currency. Indeed, and we have to have the most robust cyber protection systems available at the highest levels, not only for our offline products, but even more critically for the offline digital euro. So we have to ensure that the offline is really incredibly robust, because these exist on secure elements of the phone that people have, and then you can look at the phones, you can look at these chips. So we have to be very, very careful there. And we have to ensure that we have to check their amounts. We have to ensure that there is correct protections in place. And there will be an entire team looking at cybersecurity from our side.
Yeah. The next question I know you've addressed in your presentation, but it looks like the more details are wanted. How in the implementation and promotion of the digital euro, are you working with fintechs? Are you working with the private sector as a whole? Can you elaborate in more detail how that actually happens?
Yes, indeed. So during the preparation phase, during the investigation phase, we had numerous groups. We had the Market Advisory Group, which we call the MAG, and that was basically key experts from various aspects of all the markets to advise us on some of the decisions that we wanted to make. We also had the Euro Retail Payments Board, which is key representative of all payment stakeholders in Europe, which advises and facilitates also our decisions. In addition, we reach out to numerous stakeholders individually. We have numerous bilateral meetings, both with consumer organizations, merchant associations, banks, e-money institutions, payment institutions, and everybody in general, to make sure their voice is heard. And indeed, as I specified in the presentation, the Rulebook Development Group is a market body that we chair to facilitate the development of the rules. So everybody has a say in how those rules are developed. So we really do want to cast a wide net. And this is not the ECB developing rules by itself. It is basically us working with the market to to develop the rules for the digital euro.
The next question, I think, is very interesting. It refers to the Internet of Things. To what extent do you foresee that the digital euro will ease micropayments in the Internet of Things? Will you foresee that is a major shift, a major area of application?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. And indeed, what we'd like to provide is the base level infrastructure that innovative payment service providers can build innovative technology on. So also even in a sandbox environment. So they can look at building new innovative payment solutions such as microtransactions, other different types of transactions on top of that. And also they can earn a fee from these particular solutions. We don't want to define exactly what that will look like. We want the market to define that. So an aspect of the rulebook will to facilitate this sandboxing, facilitate new solutions. So when PSP decides, okay, I have got a very good solution here, they can work with us to develop that, and they can instantly offer that solution to all European countries, not just a domestic solution. And we do believe that's a very good selling point there. But just want to be clear, the digital euro will not be programmable. It will not be a programmable currency. One digital euro will always be one digital euro. There will not be a capability of saying this digital euro could only be used to buy meat, or this digital euro digital euro will always be able to buy all goods and services. So that's just want to be critical and very clear on that point.
Mm-hmm. A new question is, I'm sure you've put a lot of thought in that also, is a question about money laundering. How do you prevent, how you handle the money laundering risks?
Yeah, it's a very good point as well. And we have the newly established AMLA, Anti-Money Laundering Authority, which we will have to facilitate and work with to define the limits when it comes to digital euro transactions, both online and offline, to make sure that there's not a money laundering risk there. So we stand ready to work with all European institutions to make sure the digital euro is not used in that context.
Mm-hmm. The next one is quite interesting, but a little bit technical question. How does the offline capability of the digital euro compare to the offline encrypted software tokens used in the 1990s on ATM cards, so-called Geldkarte in Deutschland? These may still be active today.
Yes, the Geldkarte indeed. It's quite actually similar. The technology would be classified as kind of similar, but it's kind of the next level of that technology. And this is between two secure elements on mobile phones. So indeed, the Geldkarte would have had a secure element to facilitate that token transfer. Now this is based on the secure element in a mobile phone. And that'll be a transfer via NFC via that. So if I was to describe it, now I'm not into the detailed technical functionality. We have an offline team to facilitate this. It's the next level of this particular aspect to facilitate that transfer between two mobile phones securely and to ensure the integrity of the transfer. So that is the critical aspect here, to ensure the integrity of the transfer, because settlement is then clarified on device. So the settlement of the digital euro between devices is not clarified by a third party, which is usually what happens currently today. This is independently verified on device, and we have to ensure that, and we have to ensure that is tamper-proof to the best possible extent.
My information to the audience, we are approaching towards the end. We have another 5 minutes. So if you have a question now, is the last round of questions. And Mr. McLean, the next question I've got here is about financial inclusions. You stress that financial inclusion is one of your main objectives. Where do you see, besides elderly, which you manage, underserved areas and groups? And can you be a little bit more specific in how the inclusion is going to happen?
Indeed. We do not even see it in elderly groups. We engage with our consumer associations on a monthly basis on this point, and they tell us very clearly that it's not just about a certain group of people. In society in general, there is people who are not technology savvy. They have difficulty using smartphones and they're shy away from those aspects. We want to make sure they're included for the digital euro. How do we
But
do
how
that?
you do that? Are you going out and training them on digital phones?
No, this is pretty much what we envisage. That person could walk into use the example of a post office, can walk into a post office and say, listen, I would love to be able to use the digital euro. I don't really know how to use this app on my phone. Please help me. They will be given dedicated one-on-one advice and help to do that. Now, that's a key component of the legislation. We really hope it remains in the legislation. We truly do, because of course it's a big thing for member states to provide. They would have to provide those services to their consumers, but we think it's extremely worth it because we're being given figures of 20 to 30% of people who would actually struggle to use an app well on their phone. They can go in to their post. I'm using the post office as an example and go, please help me. And we've been told that these people want to be included. They do not want to remain excluded financially when it comes to these apps. And so therefore we have to provide that service. So they have those aspects. So we believe it's critical that this public entity can provide that support necessary to onboard people who may not have the technical skill to make these payments. And we shouldn't look at the digital euro as just for the tech savvy. It's for everybody. And one of the biggest pillars we have is digital financial inclusion. Because when you say financial inclusion in Europe, people say, oh, it's fine. We have over 95% of people who are banked. Job done. No, I'm sorry, it's not. Because the issue here is the electronic side, getting those people to be au fait with how smartphones operate, how apps operate, how two-factor authentication operates, all those aspects. I know it's difficult, it will be challenging, but we believe it's really important that that person can walk in to a public entity and say, please assist me with the digital euro. And they're given that assistance in a friendly manner, and that that brings them to the next step. It allows them to be financially included.
So we can foresee postal office, telecommunication shops to have a new leg of business in Zukunft.
I would hope so. I would the ECB and the Euro system would really hope so. And this is a call I would make to people who vote in this month in the European elections. Currently, the legislation is going through the Parliament, and the Parliament will get to change key components of this legislation. They will adapt it. One of the components is digital financial inclusion, facilitating this public approach. We would really think it's important that public approach remains in the legislation.
So let's come to the last question, and it actually ties very neatly to the discussion which we just had now. And how do you ensure that rather than following a political agenda, you're following in a market agenda, that it's a market-driven offering? How do you balance that? You depending very much on legislation, and obviously there is a political agenda, and I understand why politicians want to reach out, want to have inclusion, want to show to the citizens that they're caring. But how do you ensure that it's still market-driven?
It's complex. It's a very, very complex question. We live in a democracy, thank God. People get to have this say in how laws are developed via the MEPs in the European Parliament. And it's their job to facilitate the laws. We will stand ready to adjust our design based on the mandates of a democratic process. That's good. We are delighted to do that. But that being said, every decision has an impact. So what we will do is we will analyze those impacts on the market, with the market, and then we will relay that back to the European Parliament, the European Commission, the European Council, and say, okay, if that decision is made, this is the impact it's going to have. Do you want to go ahead with it? So that's the feedback loop we stand ready now, and we are currently doing with the European Parliament and the Council to say, guys, this particular design change you would like, this is the impact it would have on the market. It may not be the best way in the world to move forward. Maybe this is a better way to do it while still having the impact you would like. So that's the feedback loop we currently have. But I'll very much stress this is a democratic process. The people of Europe will decide do we want a digital euro or not, through the MEPs they elect in the European elections, and the European Parliament and Council will have the final say. We stand ready to implement, and that's why we're preparing to implement once, and we would hope the decision is positive once that the decision is made.
So thank you very much. Time was really flying. You've seen lots of questions. You've answered them precisely. Thank you very much for that. And I think, ladies and gentlemen, once more, you've seen Frankfurt is a city with the euro and Europe at its heart. You've proven that today, Mr. McLean. Thank you very much for that. Ladies and gentlemen, the next Food for Thought is going to be on June 26th with AMLA topics. We'll talk about combating, detecting financial crime worldwide and the regulatory requirements coming up for that. Thank you very much. Seeing you again. Have a fruitful day. It looks beautiful. Thank you and bye-bye.